So for today's practice, we're going to focus on our hips a little bit, and you may or may not want 2 blocks. If you do not have blocks at home, you can also get books and work with books or something that just stacks up a little bit that when you're in a lunge, you can put forearms down onto. And if you don't have anything, we can always just leave the hands on the hips and you can stay higher, and I'll talk you through all of that. We're going to start lying down on our backs. So come onto your mat and lower yourself down. Be safe with that motion. And you're literally just going to start with your legs extended out in front of you, much like what's called Shavasana. Right, the feet are hip distance. Take the shoulder blades and roll them down the back and let the arms come out about 45 degrees from the side. And let's just take a couple of moments here. I call this the beginning awareness work. With the eyes closed, I'm going to scan you through the body briefly. So bring your awareness into your forehead and your eyebrows and the muscles around the eyes. Soften them if they're tense. And check into your jaw. Make sure your jaw is not clenched and soften your jaw. And even the tongue. Let the tongue fall away from the roof of the mouth. Soften the throat and the neck. And let that come on down through your shoulders, your arms, your hands and fingers. And then bring your awareness into your chest and your upper back. And we're going to scan through the front and the side body. Back, front, and side body of the torso. So the upper back and the chest, and then soften on down through the mid-rib cage. And go ahead and bring that into the low belly and low back area. Checking in with the hips, and again, we're going to go into that area today, so take an extra moment there and just release any tension and just notice if there's anything going on in your hips today. Soften through the legs and let that come on down all the way to the ankles, the feet, and the toes. And then shift the awareness away from the physical body and onto the breath. And you may still notice the physical body moving on the breath, and that's wonderful. Please, please do notice that. But just starting to notice how you're breathing in this moment. And then at some point in time when you're ready, you'll start to cultivate that deeper breath. So go ahead and allow that soft belly breath to kick in, and that is simply your belly is so soft that when you inhale, the belly floats up towards the sky, and when you exhale, the belly floats back down towards the spine. And again, inhale and let that belly be really soft and just float away from the spine on the inhale. And with your exhale, go ahead and let that belly float back down towards the spine. And then from here, we're going to start to move. You can leave the eyes closed if that's better for you, or you can choose to open the eyes. They're both wonderful. You're going to go ahead and you're going to bring the right foot onto the ground and then the left foot. And then we're going to go a stage further and we're going to bring the knees all the way into the body. You're going to take your hands and put them on your knees or your kneecaps and circle the knees together. So keeping the knees moving in the same direction. You might notice that you start to get a little massage on your lower back and sacrum. You know, if anything doesn't feel right for your body, just hug the knees in stillness if movement doesn't feel good. And always find a modification for yourself. Go ahead and go the opposite direction, letting the knees move together still, but in the opposite direction. And then once the knees come back down to the chest, they're going to circle in opposite directions. So the knees will V out away from one another, move forward to the front of your mat, back together again, and then towards the chest. And then go ahead and keep following that circular motion. And notice how now we've moved that movement in the body from the low back and sacrum massage we were getting into moving the muscles around the hip joints. Go ahead and move the opposite direction with the knees. Again, now they're circling in opposite directions, but you're also moving them the other direction from the way you originally began this. And then go ahead and bring the knees in. You can go ahead and give them a little squeeze. The hips might lift a little bit. The shoulders can lift a little bit. You might even go ahead and let the head come on up and use the abdominal muscles just a little bit here just to bring the knees towards the nose, nose towards the knees.
And then go ahead and let that come on down. Let the arms come out from the side, teed out. Bring the right foot down to the ground, bring the left foot down to the ground. You're gonna walk your right foot as wide as the right edge of your mat. Left foot as wide as the left edge of your mat. Go ahead and take an inhale there, and then with an exhale, we're gonna go into windshield wiper. You'll let the knees start to swoosh over to the right. And inhale, bringing those knees back up. Exhale, the knees are gonna swoosh over to the left. And inhaling back up, possibly adding the head and the neck. The knees swoosh to the right, and it might feel okay to turn the head to the left. Inhale and bring that back up. And those knees are going to swoosh to the left. The head might turn to the right if that feels nice in your body. Inhale back up. And one more time. Let the knees head over to the right. This time you're going to pause. The head might turn to the left. And then if it feels all right in your body, you're going to put the right foot on the outer left thigh. Now, if that feels like it's causing any strain in the low back or in the knee joints, anything like that, go ahead and just put the foot back down on the mat and just soften here. And take one more breath, inhale. Exhale there. Bring the right foot back down. Inhale, bring the knees back up. And exhale them all the way over to the left. The head will turn to the right if that feels nice in your body. And the variation on this side would be your left foot on your outer right thigh, right? And then from there, again, you're just softening once you get it in. If for any reason it's uncomfortable, you put the foot back down and you just soften the legs in. Take an inhale here. And exhale. Bring that left foot down. Inhale, bring the knees and the head back up. Walk your feet back into hip distance. Bring the knees back in towards the body. And you're going to grab onto the backs of the thighs. And with an inhale, go ahead and let the hips lift a little bit. And with your exhale, you're going to try to roll up like a ball. They call it in Pilates, right? And so from there, if it takes a couple of rolls, that's totally fine. You can put your toes down on the ground if you need a second to find your balance. Everybody take the shoulder blades and slide them down the back and pull your low back in so you have that beautiful, straight, elongated spine. And then you might rock back and you might get those toes off the ground. Again, if the low back bows behind you, please do not leave the toes down on the earth. That's way more important. And imagine you have a block between your thighs. Most of you who have worked with me before know what I'm talking about, right? And you're going to go ahead and you're going to push lightly into that imaginary block to turn the inner groin on. And then you may or may not lift the legs. If by lifting the legs, the low back bows behind you, please don't. Leave them just below that point where the low back bows, right? Otherwise, keep that low back pulling in, shoulder blades moving down the back, and find whatever point you want to work from here. And then from there, you're going to put your right shin in front of your left and sit in what's called Sukhasana. If you have a knee injury, you can extend the leg or modify. Otherwise, inhale and sit up nice and tall. And then you're going to go ahead and you're going to start to fold over those legs. And if your right shin is in front, probably your right outer hip will talk to you a little bit. And from there, if it feels nice to rock a little bit from side to side, that might do ya, right? If not, you just stay still and we'll all meet up in a second. And then go ahead and come on back to neutral. You're going to inhale and reach the chest forward to bring it on up. Put the feet on the ground with the knees bent. Grab onto the backs of the thighs. Slide the shoulder blades down the back. Right? And again, we're looking for the spine. The spine is the most important piece of this puzzle. So don't let the spine change at all, even as you rock back onto the back of your buttocks bones. Right? Imagine that block between your thighs and press into your imaginary block and see if you can get your inner groin to turn on. You might lift the legs, you might not, right? Push through the ball mounds of the toes. You might release the hands, you might not. We're going to add one piece on potentially. You can stay right here the whole time. You do not have to go into this, right? Otherwise, you're going to go ahead and you're going to push the ball mounds of the feet forward. You're going to start to pull the low belly in and round the low back, but keep the shoulder blades moving down the back. And then on an inhale, without popping up, you're going to try to pull that back in. Put your left shin in front of your right. Get super duper tall here. And then exhale again, hinging from the hips, we start to fold over. And with that left shin in front, the left outer hip is probably going to get an opening. And if you need to favor a knee and extend a leg or whatever that is in your body, please, please listen to your body, right? And inhale, reach that chest forward and go ahead and come on up. And from there, we're going to go into hands and knees. So you can either cross the ankles, go a little wider, and roll over the ankles, or bring the legs together, swoosh them back around. And we'll meet in hands and knees just for a moment. And from there, I just want to simply do some hip circles. So again, we're trying to get into our hips today and get some space in there. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to let your hips guide this and just let them start to circle around. Whatever direction you started is totally awesome. You can make this a smaller motion, especially if your knees are talking to you, and you can double your mat over, by the way. Go the other direction with the hips, where I like to put a blanket underneath my knees, but I'm on carpet here, so I've got a little padding with my situation. Come back to neutral, and then from there, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go to downward dog. So for downward dog, you walk your hands just a little bit in front of your shoulders, about 2 inches. You curl your toes under and go ahead and start to push yourself up and back into downward dog. Now, if that doesn't seem right for you, I'll show a modification. You can be on hands and knees, and you can start to walk your hands forward. It's the same motion, you're just not bearing as much weight, right? So this might be a little bit more doable for you. For my downward doggers, bend the knees, come up onto the ball mounds of the feet, or I could say lift your heels up and reach those buttocks, bones up and back. Get all that length in your spinal column. And then maybe you start to push the heels down towards the ground and root them down. They don't have to touch the earth. That's not the point, right? They just reach down, and as they do, the legs engage, and they help the upper body a little more so the upper body doesn't have to do all of the work. I like to think of it as they become responsible, right? We want them to be responsible. Take an inhale there. And exhale. Now we're going to step the right foot forward. For my friends on hands and knees, step the right foot wide and walk it over. For my friends in downward dog, inhale the right leg up. And on an exhale, go ahead and step that foot forward. You're going to leave that left knee lifted, and we're going to move towards crescent. You can use blocks here or those books or whatever it is that you're working with if it feels better for you to have a little bit of height. You might stay right here. You might inhale and go ahead and start to come on up into what is called crescent pose. Now go ahead and bend that left knee a little bit. And then you're going to work that leg towards straight again. And again, bend that knee. When you bend the knee, pull the frontal hip points up and find your pelvis is neutral, right? Your arms can stay up. I'm just showing some things. Exhale, you might push that heel back and that thigh might lift a little bit. And let's do that one more time. Inhale, bend the knee a little bit and pull the frontal hip points up. And then keep that. Exhale, straighten the leg any amount. And then let's go ahead and bring those hands down. And we're going to go to downward dog again. So if you're working with blocks, you might move them off to the side. And you'll step the right foot back to match the left. Again, if you're working on hands and knees, you can go ahead and you can let that foot step out and go nice and wide. And from hands and knees, you would do cat and cow, right? From there, my people in downward dog, you're going to inhale the left leg up behind you. And exhale, step that forward. My friends who were in hands and knees, you're going to walk the left foot over and wide and bring it all the way in. And then lift the right leg. You might stay right here. You can be on blocks or on the ground, whatever works for you, and lengthen the spinal column. And then inhale, start to move up towards your crescent. Now from there, again, you're going to bend the knee and exhale, straighten the leg. Inhale, when you bend the knee, you're going to pull your frontal hip points up and try to keep that as much as you can, even as you exhale and send the right heel back a little bit. One more time. Inhale, bend the knee and pull the frontal hip points up and then keep that work. Exhale, straighten the leg any amount. Inhale, length. Exhale, bring that down and step back to downward facing dog again. Right? My friends who know how to do that, you just step the left foot back. Otherwise, the left foot can come wide. Right? The right knee can come down and you can come to hands and knees and cat-cow if that works better for you. Go ahead and take one more breath there. Inhale. And exhale. We're going to go into one more piece here. You're going to inhale the right leg into the air behind you and exhale, step it forward between the hands or walk it wide. And then this time we're going to go ahead and we're going to bring that knee down initially. You can leave the toes curled under or you can uncurl them and push the shin down if that feels more stable. You're going to walk your right foot to the right edge of your mat and bring both arms inside. This might be a place where you want those blocks or something a little higher, and I'll show that in a second. You're going to inhale and reach the chest forward. And then as you exhale, you're going to start to let the hips drop down. Now the left hip is going to want to drop it. It has more access, right? So get the right hip to really activate and try to drop the right hip down just as much as you're dropping the left. Just going to get into the hips. You're going to keep pushing the sole of the right foot down. And this is a place where for some of my friends, you may find that you can come down to blocks. You know, I like to encourage you to keep a fairly straight spine here and not just completely round the spine to try to get into something. Try and keep that nice and long and you'll get a little more action in your hips. You're going to take an inhale there. And for some of my friends, if it doesn't go into your knee joint, it feels nice. You might let that right leg move out to the right away from the body. And then stamp that right foot back down to the earth. If you're working with blocks, you're going to go ahead and you're going to move them off to the side. And we're going to step back to downward dog again, or hands and knees. So curl the left toes under, lift the left leg, and step that right leg back. And breathe there. Inhale. And exhale. Moving to the other side, step the left foot forward. So inhale the left leg into the air behind you. Exhale, step it forward between the hands and bring the right knee down. Again, you can be on blocks or have them handy here. You're going to walk the left foot up to the left side of your mat. Bring both hands inside. Take an inhale and reach that chest forward. And then in your exhale, again, as you start to lower down, you'll notice the right hip has a little more axis. It's a little easier on that side. So you're going to go ahead and see if that left hip can drop down just a little bit more and try to work the left side of the body. And that's going to get you really good stuff, both in the front of the right hip, but also that outer left hip starts to activate. Go ahead and come onto your blocks if you're working with blocks here. And that can be whatever height feels good to you. You can just stay on palms. Again, I encourage you to keep the spine a little longer. Take an inhale, and on an exhale, if it's okay with your knee and your hip, you might roll onto the pinky edge of your left foot, letting the left knee move away from the body and elongating all the way out. Take one more breath there, inhale. And then on your exhale, you're going to seal the sole of the foot down, and you're going to go ahead and walk that foot back in. Plant your hands down, curl the right toes under, and step back to downward facing dog. Adho Mukha Svanasana is the fancy name. Take an inhale there. On your exhale, come up on your tippy toes, bend your knees, look forward, and you'll step or jump up to the top of your mat. Hands on the shins, inhale, reach that chest forward and elongate the spine. Exhale, fold back in. Hands on the hips, elbows up to the sky. Reach the chest forward as you start to come up so you get that spine as long as possible on the journey. And then go ahead and reach those arms down. So we're going to go into what's called a sun salutation A. And it goes something like this. I'll tell you all about it. Inhale, reach those arms out and up. Exhale and fold in. Inhale, the hands will come onto the shins and we'll reach that chest forward again. And then we're going to bend our knees and plant our hands, stepping our left foot back and then our right foot back until we make it to plank. Now feel free to drop the knees here if that feels like a lot of work, right? Or you can go to downward dog and meet us there. Otherwise, you're going to go ahead and you're going to rock forward on your tippy toes. You'll bend your elbows. They should brush the side as you come all the way down. Uncurl your toes and press into the tops of the feet. And inhale up into what's called baby cobra, Bhujangasana. So I'm trying to get into my upper back here. So I want you to bring your awareness into your pelvis since we're talking about the pelvis today. Go ahead and see if you can get the frontal hip points to lift all the way up through the shoulders, through the crown of the head, forward, right? And as that happens, your tailbone starts to drop down towards the ground and the buttocks bones lengthen towards the heels. That's going to keep your low back long and protected. Take one more inhale here. And exhale, go ahead and come on down. Now you might just go into that again, and if that's right for you, go ahead and do that. Again, I'm not going to teach upward dog, but for my friends who've been with me for a while, you might inhale and come either into a low cobra, right? Or if the hands move back, you might straighten the arms so that the shoulders are right over the wrists, they're called, as you come into your upward facing dog. This should not feel like it's karate chopping your low back. And curl the toes under, and either with the knees down for my low cobra-ers, right? Or with those legs lifted, we move all the way back to downward facing dog. Go ahead and take another breath here. Inhale. And exhale. We're going to go to some standing poses. Inhale the right leg into the air behind you, and exhale, go ahead and float that foot forward between the hands. Take a second while you're here. In case you're going to want to block, you're just going to move that block somewhere on the outside of the right foot. That way it'll be there for you. Go ahead and drop your left heel down to the ground, and your right heel should intersect your left arch. You'll elongate the spine and drop that right thigh down into the lunge, and then left arm windmills all the way over, and we end up in what's called Warrior 2. Virabhadrasana 2 is the fancy name. You want that ankle to be right underneath the knee, right? So you might need to adjust your stance accordingly to that so that it comes right underneath.
And today I'm going to talk about the horseshoe action of the front leg, right? So the arms can stay out, chest towards the long edge of your mat. I'm going to use my hands to show a couple of things, right? Hands on the hips if you're like, oh my gosh. So the horseshoe action goes like this. From the inner groin all the way through the inner knee, you lengthen that knee straight over your second toe. But from the outer knee, the outer right knee, to the outer right hip, we draw that right hip in and under us. And then we pull the frontal right hip point up, so we end up with a really neutral pelvis. Now don't let anything change in that front leg, but push that left heel down and activate that left thigh, and then pull the frontal hip points up so you get a long lower back and you get all that support. And there is a baby twist in the upper body, right? The pelvis is slightly this way. We try to turn the torso so that it's the long edge of the mat. And then if it feels all right in our neck, we might turn our head to look over the right fingertips-ish. Next is reverse warrior. I know I'm taxing your legs, I'm doing that on purpose, right? The left hand will drop, the right palm turns up, and without lifting the right thigh or hip, we reach the right fingertips up towards the sky. Take an inhale here, exhale, and then with an inhale, we're gonna reach all the way forward to Parsva Konasana. You're gonna drop your hand onto the ground or onto a block on the outside of the right foot. Left hand's gonna come onto the hip for a second. And as we push the right leg and the right arm together and get that right hip into the socket, so you can tell I'm on that kick today, right? Right hip in the socket. You're gonna go ahead and reach that left shoulder up, that left elbow back, and roll the body and rotate it so the chest remains forward. Now maybe you take that arm and you reach that, palm turns down to the ground, or I could say pinky finger rotates down as I reach all the way overhead, bicep next to ear, I push the left heel down and I reach away. Anyone feeling their outer right hip right now? I love you, even though I'm just on camera. And then go ahead and inhale, I'm taxing you. Come on up to warrior two, try to stay in the bend if you can. And then bring that all the way up and over. Stepping back to a plank if you want heat, downward dog if you don't. Child's pose if you're like, oh my goodness. We exhale through our push-up. Inhale into upward facing dog or low cobra, that first one I showed you. And we exhale back, downward facing dog. Just notice your right hip compared to your left hip right now. Just observing. Inhale the left leg into the air behind you. And exhale, go ahead and step that foot forward between the hands, right? And then you're gonna get nice and low on your lunge and drop the right heel down. Your left heel intersects with your right arch. And then the right arm is gonna windmill to bring you all the way up. You'll be facing the other direction on your mat. I'm going to turn and face the camera here, right? But I still have my left leg forward. And then from there, it's the same things that we're looking for. We're gonna make sure your arms are out, chest to the long edge of your mat. Again, I'm gonna show you a couple of things, so I'm not doing that motion. I'm gonna make sure that my weight is in my left heel and that my ankle's underneath my knee. I'm a little ahead of myself here, so I'm gonna come back just a little bit. And then the horseshoe action. From the inner left groin through the inner left knee, lengthen that. If it helps you to touch it, touch it. I'm a firm believer in adjusting yourself, right? And then from the outer knee, it pulls all the way back into the outer hip, and the outer left hip kind of wraps in and under you. Keep that action, but now activate by pushing that right heel down and get that thigh to turn on, and pull the left frontal hip point up, pull the frontal hips up so you get out of that low back. Arms reach wide, the right ribs rotate back just a little bit, and then keep that, but the head may turn to look over the left fingertips. Take an inhale there. And with our exhale, our right hand comes down to our back thigh. We turn our left palm up. We keep the left hip dropping down or heavy, right, as we reach away from it. Take an inhale here. And exhale, sit down into it. Let that left thigh be heavy. And then inhale, reach, reach, reach. I forgot to have you put a block, but it's not too far away if you just used it. So go ahead and if you want to grab that block, come to the outside of the leg, whether you're on the floor or the block. Put the right hand on the hip for now. You're going to go ahead and you're going to bear a little bit of weight in that block. Bend in, and you're going to push the arm and the leg together. And see if you can get that left hip to come on into the socket, right? And then from there, reach the right shoulder up, the right ribs rotate back. You might just stay right there with the hand, especially if you have a shoulder injury. Otherwise, you might reach that arm all the way over, pinky finger rotating down to ground, bicep next to ear, push the back heel down, reach that away. And then from there, move the block and inhale up into warrior two. Try to leave the knees bent. I've already taught this class once and my legs are like, why? Go ahead and rotate down.
And you can take one more vinyasa if you want a little bit of heat, or go to downward dog. Exhale through your push-up. Inhale, I'll show low cobra this time, or upward dog if you know it. I'm not going to teach it. And exhale, you can always use your knees, but keep that low belly pulled in so we stay out of the karate chopping of the low back. Downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. Now use this as a place to breathe. Now you're going to go ahead and you're going to inhale the right leg into the air behind you and step it forward between the hands. Bring the left heel down, and then you're going to go ahead and you're going to walk your hands over to the left. Turn your toes towards the left side of your mat. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, look at the camera. I just did it. From there, you're going to put your hands underneath you on the ground. If you need the blocks, you can pull the blocks over, reach the chest forward. Put the hands on the hips, elbows up on your exhale, and with an inhale, come all the way back up so you're standing. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to go into what's called goddess pose, or some people call it horse stance pose. You're going to go ahead and let the feet turn out. My legs are about one of my legs, right? One of your legs if you're setting up your stance, about a leg's distance. My feet are at about 45, and then I bend my knees and I ensure my knees are going over my second toe, so I might need to adjust that a little bit. Go ahead and put your hands on your hips initially. Take an inhale, and then with an exhale, you're going to start to bend the knees, and you're going to go ahead and you're going to start to sit down. Now go ahead and let the hands slide down the thighs just a little bit, and I'm going to show you the side view of this. Pardon me. So I want to have my ankles underneath my knees, right? And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take an inhale, and with an exhale, I'm going to let my right shoulder move over towards my left knee. I might even push lightly with my right hand. Inhale and come back. You're not trying to force that into anything. Don't be aggressive. Left knee towards left shoulder towards right knee, and I use that left hand and I just lightly elongate that inner groin. Inhale and come back. We're going to do that one more time. Exhale, right shoulder towards left knee, in maybe a little pressure with that right hand. Be gentle. Inhale back to neutral, and then my left shoulder towards my right knee, and I'm going to go ahead and gently elongate that inner groin. Come on back to neutral. The butt wants to stick out so badly here, so drop that tailbone down. Inhale, try to bring the upper body up, and if it's available, inhale, reach those arms all the way up, and again, try not to stay in that position or that sway back, right? We want to have the buttocks bones reaching down. Push the inner heels down to come all the way up. Exhale, bring those arms out and down. And I know you're working hard because I am. You're going to go ahead and you're turn your toes forward from there. And we're going to go into what's called Prasarita Padottanasana is the fancy name. It's a forward fold. Shoulder heads back. Shoulder blades down the back and get tall. You can bend the knees to come in or not. And if you want the blocks, grab the blocks and put them in front of you. You might then start to fold in. When you get to about that halfway point, bring the fingertips on the blocks or on the ground. Really make sure your toes are facing straight forward, right? For you guys, it would be the long edge of the mat. Take an inhale, reach the chest forward, and on your exhale, you may have a little more folding in you, right? And it's not what you want so much, it's what your body can do, so please listen to your body. You might walk your hands back so they're between your toes, soften the shoulders away from the ears, that's up in this instance, and soften the crown of the head down to or towards the ground. If you're quite close, you can always bring a block in and put a block underneath the crown of your head and rest on the block, right? Otherwise, you can also just let the weight of the head dangle, pulling you in. It's about a 13-pound bowling ball, that skull of yours. And then from there, you're going to inhale and reach the chest forward, come halfway up, hands under shoulders. Exhale, hands on the knees. If you feel like you need to toe heel it in, you can. Otherwise, inhale, reach the chest forward to come on up. And go ahead and step those feet. And again, if it feels awfully wide and the legs are like, whoo, go heels, toes, and then step it in. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to bring it down into what's called malasana. So if you know that your hips are tight or you start to come down and you realize that they are, I'm going to encourage you to take a blanket underneath the heels, or I'm going to show if you don't have a lot of blankets and stuff laying around, right? You can just take your mat and you can go ahead and you can roll that mat up and you can make yourself a nice little perch for your heels.
And it depends on how tight you are as to where you would like that, right? You're gonna go ahead and you're gonna bring your feet about hip distance, maybe a little bit wider. Let's go a little wider since it's our first Malasana. Garland pose, this one's called. And you're gonna go ahead and put the heels on that roll, but my ball mounds of my feet are very squarely planted on the ground, right? And you're gonna go ahead and inhale, and you're gonna reach the arms up. And as you exhale, you're gonna start to sit down. And again, both arms would be up for you guys. I'm just trying to show some stuff. Reach the buttocks bones down and pull the low belly in, and go ahead and come all the way down through that squat. And then from there, you're gonna go ahead and you're gonna bring your arms in between your legs, right? And if you need to go a little wider or turn the toes out a little bit, you can. Your toes should be pointing the same way as your knees. I'm gonna bring my arms in there, and then as I push my palms together, my arms and my legs push together as well, right? And that hopefully elongates the spine and gets you out of that rounding action. You're gonna round a little bit, right? But we're working against that. And as the thumbs move towards the heart, the shoulder blades move down the back, my chest reaches forward and up. Now, pelvic floor work, right? Push your inner heels down, push your inner heels down, and push your inner heels down. As you do, you might notice how the buttocks lift a little bit, but more importantly, whether or not you felt it, your perineum area just got a lift, right? The pelvic floor, which both men and women have, the pelvic floor started to lift, and this is really, really good stuff for the pelvic floor. Take one more breath, inhale. And then with your exhale, you get to go ahead and let those arms unwind, let those legs unwind. If you had your, it's called a mat, rolled up underneath, you're gonna go ahead and you're gonna unroll that now. And then you can go ahead and you can just come to a seated position. So one thing to do here, forward fold, and then we're on our backs. We'll do a couple things there, and then Shavasana, we're not too far. Paschimottanasana, west facing forward fold. I have Tadasana, mountain pose legs, right? So I'm gonna flex my feet, I'm gonna push my heels and the ball mounds of my big toe and my pinky straight into an imaginary wall. I'm gonna pull my kneecaps up and move my thighs down. For my hyperextenders, you have to work your heels and your thighs equally. Bring your fingertips next to you, and if right now you're like, oh my gosh, it's so hard to bring my pelvis in, you're gonna take a block or a blanket, and you're gonna bring it right underneath your buttocks. If you're like, I don't have any of those things around, Crystal, well, I could have told you, I suppose, earlier, but you can always roll that mat back up and put a little bit of a boost underneath your hips that way. With my fingertips right next to my hips, not behind me, I slide my shoulder blades down my back, and I get nice and long here, right? Both long through the legs, heels reaching forward, and long through the crown of the head so that I elongate all sides of my body. My pelvis is neutral, and holy moly, my core is turned on, right? And then from there, I may or may not reach my arms up, and then I'm folding from my hips. I don't let my feet change. I don't let my legs turn off. I bring my hands down. Pulling my shins back, I reach my chest forward and find that elongation of the spine again. And right now I'm squarely in my hamstrings. If you're having difficulty and you're tight, you know you can always bend the knees and keep the feet flexed, and you can always work from that position, right? Working the legs towards straight, but they don't ever have to straighten. And then from there, take one more inhale, and then with an exhale from your low back, your lumbar spine, start to unwind one vertebrae at a time and fold over into this. You can keep the little bit of motion of the arms pulling against the legs. And if you want to soften it, just let the palms turn up, let go of the legs, and just take a breath here. You worked pretty good in a short period of time, so take a breath whichever way you're working. Inhale and exhale. With our inhale, we pull our low bellies in, shoulder blades down the back to reach the chest forward and come on up. Now from there, you're going to go ahead and you're going to make sure your buttocks are in the middle of your mat. We're going to roll down, and we don't want to hit our knock our noggin, right? So from there, you're going to go ahead and, just like boat earlier in class, we slide our shoulder blades down our back and get really tall. Most intense is the arms in front of us, medium intense walking down, least intense fingertips on the ground. So pick your poison, take an inhale, and with an exhale, push through the ball mounds of the toes and keep those legs in, right? Don't let them go wide. Pull your low belly and start to round your low back, but slide your shoulder blades down your back, trying to reach your chest forward and up. And this time we get to hug those knees in and maybe rock from side to side if that feels nice. We're going to go into thread the needle for the outer hips, so the feet are going to come on the ground.
You're going to go ahead and put your right ankle bone beyond your left knee bone, flexing the right foot, right thigh moves forward. Now you can stay here the whole day and just use that right hand and kind of corkscrew that leg, that femur bone in the socket. And that might start to get your outer right hip, and that might be nice, yeah? And then if you're not feeling a whole lot, right, your outer hip has a little more openness than that, you might bring the leg in and interlace behind the left thigh. Do not, right, lift the tailbone all the way up and the hips off the ground. Do not lift the shoulders and the head in. Everything should be able to lay down, right, the sacrum, the shoulders, the back of the head. And we have a long spine here, even as the right thigh moves forward. And then maintaining all of that, you might be able to hug the left knee in, but try not to round the spine into a ball formation. Try to keep the spine elongated. And then breathe. Probably feeling that outer right hip right now. Take one more breath, inhale. And exhale, you're going to go ahead and you're going to let that left foot come down to the ground. You're going to cross your right leg all the way over the left. Tee the arms out to the side, take an inhale, and then with an exhale, let the knees swish over to the right. Now you kind of got to put a little action in the right leg to keep it from slipping off of the left, but the nice thing about this formation is the right leg just weights that left leg in, and you're probably getting a little bit of action in your lower left back, kind of around the corner from the love handle. You might even feel it in the hip or the thigh. If it's too much, uncross the legs and just stack the knees. Head might turn to the left, and let's take one breath in softness. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale the knees back up. Uncross the legs. We'll do the same sequence on the other side. Left ankle bone beyond the right knee bone. Flex the left foot and that left thigh. Again, you can put your hand on the thigh itself to help it move forward and kind of corkscrew the leg in the socket. You might start to bring those legs in and interlace behind the right thigh. And again, you want to be able to try to find that long, long spine again, just like you started with. So let the pelvis, the sacrum, move down towards the ground and get heavy. Let the shoulders move down. The head should be on the ground. And then that left thigh tries to move forward. And then keep all of that. And then maybe you hug the right leg a little closer to the body. And again, we're just looking for a little stretch in that outer left hip. It doesn't have to be something that's so sensational that our jaw clenches and our forehead furrows. And we want to find the place a little bit before that, where it actually has a chance to soften, right? And maybe after you've been there for a couple of breaths, inhale, maybe with this next exhale, you go a little deeper. And then go ahead and let that right foot come down to the ground. You're going to cross your left leg all the way over your right till your thighs are touching. If this doesn't work, you can always just do thread the needle or double knee stack. Stack. Tee the arms out to the side with the palms up. Take an inhale. And then exhale, let those knees swoosh over to the left. And let that left leg weight the right leg in. And then maybe that the right head. The head turns to the right shoulder softens down. See, even when I'm on film, I still goof up my speech all the time. And you're not missing much. Take a breath, inhale. And exhale there. And then inhale, go ahead and bring that all the way back up. Uncross the legs. And then we're going to move into what's called Shavasana or corpse pose. Go ahead and let those arms slide down so they're about halfway out from their sides. Take a moment and slide the shoulder blades down the back. And then there are two options with the legs. You're going to go ahead and extend them all the way out for me and have them about hip distance. Now, if for any reason this causes sensitivity in the low back, the hamstrings, the hips, right, then, yeah, you can bring the feet back, feet on the ground, walk the feet a little wide and lean the knees in. Even better if you have a blanket, roll a blanket underneath your thighs and extend your legs. And it does this job for you without you having to bend the knees. So whichever variation feels right for your body today, please take that variation, but definitely soften the hips. I'm going to talk you through that body scan again. Bring your awareness into your forehead and soften the muscles of the forehead and the eyebrows and the muscles around the eyes. And then bring your awareness into your jaw and your tongue and soften those. Let that softness come on down through your throat, your neck, your shoulders, into the upper arms, the elbows, the lower arms, wrists, hands, and fingers. Soften the chest and the upper back. And let that softness trickle down through the mid-rib cage area, front, sides, and back. Softening the belly and the low back. And then take a moment in those hips. This is the busiest intersection of the body with some of the largest muscles of the body. So soften anything that you can feel. And then we did a lot of work in the upper legs, so softening the upper legs. Through the knees, shins, ankles, feet, and toes. And then with the body physically soft, maintain that. And then let the breath come to whatever it is when you're not thinking about it. So just the natural breath, we're no longer trying to control it. And thoughts are gonna come into your mind. That's what the mind was built to do. So it's not so much that we're trying to stop thoughts that come from coming in. We're allowing them in. For me, the hard part is allowing them to leave, right? Usually they come in and then I build a whole scenario around them, a daydream, or I like to think like in a movie or an illusion. And so instead of building a whole tangent around that thought, let the thought go. And of course, that is the true work of yoga. I'm going to take my voice out of this for just a few moments. Keep your eyes closed. Try to stay physically still. And just take a few moments where you don't have to do anything. You just get to be. And I'll talk you out in a few moments. Allow your awareness to come back to your breath. And it might feel nice to wiggle your fingers and your toes. If you'd prefer to stay still, just bring your awareness to your physical body and notice it again, getting it ready for movement. You might stretch your arms overhead. You can point and flex the toes and the feet, whatever feels nice. And you're going to go ahead and you're going to bring your knees in towards your chest, one at a time. Rolling over to the right. You can use that right arm as a pillow. Left hand will gently push the floor away to bring you up to a seated position. And we will not be here for long, but we're going to be here for a moment. So you can always grab a block and sit yourself up on a block so you have a little more neutrality in your pelvis. Right? If you need to favor a leg, any of those things you need, you take. Close the eyes again. Palms can be up or down. And just notice if the body feels any differently than when we started class.
And if so, how? Does the breath feel different? Does the brain? Bring your palms together at your chest. Take a big old inhale and get tall. And then keep that chest lifted as you exhale and bow your head. Taking a moment there and being grateful that you gave yourself this space or time. Maybe thank your body for being the wonderful mechanism that it is. That no matter how hard, I always think of it like the Timex watch, right? It takes a licking and keeps on ticking. We don't usually eat the right foods all the time. We often do pretty hard things on it when we move and do things, and still this beautiful body gets us through this life. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Honoring the light that shines within. Namaste.